Today we're speaking with Joanne Mercer, who at the age of 32 founded and ran Jo Mercer Footwear. She left the business in 2007 and since then has been a key figure at Myer, heading up footwear and accessories departments until last year. Joanne is now working with a startup online marketplace called Buy Aussie Now. Welcome, Joanne.
Hi, Beverly. Good morning. How are you?
Very well. Joanne, what first interested you in working in the fashion industry?
Well, I was at Melbourne University and I was at one of the colleges and had a job at Myer as a casual. So really it was me trying to earn some money to get me through university. And I got a job in the Miss Shop at Myer as a casual, and I just fell in love with fashion. I loved the pace. I actually loved the product, of course, and I loved the department store environment. So it was really the excitement of my first job, I guess, in a fashion business that got me going.
So obviously after uni, you started working in that industry, but you were, relatively young, really, when you started Jo Mercer Shoes. So what prompted you to take that leap and start your own footwear line?
Well, I had been working as a buyer at Myer, so I'd sort of progressed from graduate trainee after university through to trainee buyer, and I had become a junior buyer, actually in footwear, buying Miss Shop shoes. And then I became the buyer of international designer footwear and the high-end shoes. So I'd sort of had quite a well-rounded shoe career already at that stage, even though I was only 32. And I could see just a gap in the Australian marketplace for really comfortable but sort of on-trend fashion footwear that didn't compromise on comfort. So that was the premise that we started with. And I could see that there was a really strong and growing market for this category, but not, shoes that were really pitched at a sort of older lady, more just contemporary, comfortable fashion shoes to wear to work, but also on the weekend.
Wow. So you stepped away from the business in 2007. How difficult was that to step away from, what essentially was your baby?
It was my baby and it was really hard. But the reality for me was I was by this stage 42 and I desperately wanted to have another child. And I had been working so hard for, the previous 12 years. And I was doing a lot of travel. I was constantly on the move. And, unfortunately, as a woman, we're sort of, we've got a biological clock. And so I had to really make a decision to prioritize my family ahead of the business. And I knew there was no chance of me being able to fall pregnant at 42. And I'd already had a couple of miscarriages. So I made the decision that it was the right thing for me, for my family, and that I just had to be a little bit brave about that. You can always have a career, but you can't always have a family.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think it comes back to that whole thing about people never lie on their deathbeds and say, "I wish I'd worked more," but they often lie there wishing they'd spent more time with family. So it's a difficult decision, but a really courageous one. Where do you see sort of footwear and accessories? The trends and where do you see happening with the market at the moment?
Oh gosh, it's been such a massive swing into casualization. It's crazy. So for all, the heels that we've got in our cupboard, the sort of clutches, the little dressy handbags, we've had to park everything. And really, the world has gone casual. So what's working? It's sneakers, it's sort of, chunky sandals, Birkenstocks, anything that's sort of flat, easy wear, casual, and that's been such a, it was a growth category anyway, but honestly, with last year and COVID, it's just, on steroids, and literally people, that's all they're wearing. Like, people are literally getting around. They're even now, people wearing their sneakers with a pretty dress, and it's totally on trend, and you can get away with it. So, I feel a bit sad that I've had to put all my heels and park them away, but that is the trend.
Chiropractors are probably hoping that heels are going to come back as well, so we can all put our backs out. But do you think it's going to stay like that, or do you think it'll eventually swing back?
Look, fashion always swings, but it really will take some time, because I think a lot of young girls have just literally almost never worn a pair of court shoes or, a pair of higher heels. So, and it is a different thing. It's much more difficult to walk, as we know, and it's just much more effort. So look, there will be a swing back. There'll be some really cool influencer who all of a sudden changes the trend. I can see for next winter already, like, long boots are coming back on trend, which is lovely. My absolute favorite category, long boots. So, fashion moves, and it always will. But for now, and I think for the next couple of years, really, this whole casualisation is here to stay. We may as well embrace it, enjoy it. It's nice to be comfortable.
It certainly is, yes. Although I put that down to my age, so I, not to anything else. So can you tell me about this new startup online marketplace, Buy Aussie Now? What's that about?
Yeah, well, a guy I used to work with at Myer, Mitch Catlin, this is years ago. He's an amazing marketer, and he contacted me almost immediately, once I left Myer last year, and he asked me to look at joining them in terms of putting together a cross-category lifestyle brand that sits on the marketplace. So Buy Aussie Now is basically a startup company where if your product is made in Australia and owned by an Australian, you can register your brand on the marketplace. And they've had unprecedented, demand. I mean, they were expecting, 1,500 people to sort of registered their brands, and they ended up with 6,500. It's been a massive success story. And so, I will be looking after a lifestyle brand that is, part of that company, and called Matilda Life. So that's what I'm up to. And it's been really exciting trying to sort of source product that's made here in Australia. Obviously, a lot of manufacturing and fashion in particular disappeared offshore back in the 90s when tariffs came down. And literally, there's hardly anything made here. The skills have disappeared out of the country. And so, trying to actually start up a new brand here that's made here. And of course, I want to have shoes in there, of course. So it has been, enormously challenging, but also enormously rewarding. It would be great to see some of these manufacturing businesses back here in Australia.
Do you feel that's going to be an ongoing trend? Because I know that there's been a pushback in the UK for what they're now calling onshoring. So companies pulling back some of their manufacturing to manufacture it onshore to give them more flexibility, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see that something that may happen here as well?
Look, I really do. And, I think, there's a lot of things to consider. There's jobs for people here. There's also just that security of knowing that if the supply chain does get disrupted for any reason, such as COVID, we have the capability in this country to still manufacture the product. And the reality is we really barely make a pair of shoes in this country, or virtually no apparel. It's cost prohibitive. And so, I think people are prepared. They're ready for that. They're prepared to spend a little bit more to buy something, knowing that it's made here, it's created jobs here, And, I think that world of fast disposable fashion is somewhat being challenged by a number of people.
And Joanne, I would agree with you, and I certainly see it with this younger Gen Z who are really sort of turning their back on fashion, and therefore looking for something which is going to be more long lasting. And then again, there's all this re-commerce thing happening where they're then going to sell on, something that they've bought, and they're going to buy something else that somebody else has once previously owned, but it's new to them. And I think this whole quality as opposed to disposable is probably something that we're going to see more and more of.
I really hope so, because the idea that you just throw out clothing is it's just not, it doesn't feel right. And I think for everyone it doesn't feel right, but if it's really cheap, it doesn't bother you. And, our premise is to have it made in Australia, to have it really good quality, at a fair price that people feel like they want to buy into that brand because it's cool, it's fashion, it's nice, and it's supporting people in this country. So that's what we're aiming for.
And let's face it, we need the economy to pick up, and we need to support Australian jobs and Australian workers. So that I think it's a fantastic, business that you're working with. Lastly, I like to ask all my interviewees this: what advice would you give to someone starting their career in the fashion industry today?
Well, one of the key things I really believe is, follow your dreams. If you've got a passion to do something, give it a go. It's really worth chasing your dreams and staying true to your vision. You don't have to necessarily be some genius, or really, you can start small, but if you've got an idea and you've got a dream and a vision of what you want to create, give it a go. So that would be my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice, which I used to give all my girls and the guys who worked for me over the years, is work hard. Because honestly, when you're starting your career up, people really do appreciate the ones who roll up their sleeves and just get on with it and work hard. And I just think, you don't have to be, the noisiest in the group. You can be a quiet achiever. You can be noisy if you want to be noisy. It doesn't matter. But that thing of just being able to get on with it and work your little butt off, I think makes you a standout. And probably the third piece of advice I would give is just always make sure that you act with integrity and honesty. Never, ever allow yourself to compromise on that. And if you stick to sort of those three things, I think, follow your vision, always work hard, act with integrity. I feel like you're going to have a great career.
Wow, that's really great. Some really lovely advice. And John, it's been fantastic talking to you. It's been really interesting hearing about your previous business and also what you're doing now. So thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, absolute pleasure, Beverly.